Take a breath.
Okay.
Yes, just relax.
Take a
God, that
breath.
was terrible.
I know.
This east-west thing is difficult.
I came on bicycle, you know, whatever, I had to go downtown this morning, or actually, yes, whatever, for whatever reason, something possessed me to actually get in the car and drive. I came home to Greg and I said, the bicycle was right outside the door. What was I thinking?
We'll go ahead and call the Wednesday, July 8th, 2015 Resource Management and Administration Committee to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Klaus?
Here.
Crawford?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Here.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
And Crope.
Here, finally. My apologies to everyone for my not remembering what month and week it is in Grand Traverse County. Any changes to the minutes at all? Okay, they will stand approved. First public comment, Lana, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment shall be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, that being heard, is there anyone here for first public comment? We would love to have you, Miss Georgia.
Oops, sounds like my joints. Georgia Durga, Director, Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging. And I didn't see it on the agenda, but I was thinking that you might be talking about relocation of different departments in the Commission on Aging was one of those departments. And I just wanted to let you know that most of our board met yesterday and was talking about it and wanted to express their concerns that our unique needs are addressed as a unique department and individual department, and that we're hoping that you will include us in any decision-making process. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mrs. Shipman.
Good evening. Susie Shipman, Grand Traverse County Resource Recovery Manager. I had an update, and it was an item that didn't make it onto the report, so I just really quickly wanted to address illegal dumping. I hadn't provided you with a current report in a few months here, so well, actually probably since last fall. The season is here. First of all, we had a couple of big cleanups last fall. You might recall I reported on those, one of them being out in Whitewater Township on a county-owned site. And we had found some material there that we were hoping to lead back through an investigation. And I wanted to commend the Sheriff's Department and specifically Deputy Travis Horn for the work that he's done there. He was able to track down a probable location and unfortunately not enough evidence in order to actually carry it forward with an investigation. So it's currently closed pending further information, but I thought it was a really good process to go through, and it was very educational for me as well to see how much can be done with what we did find. So that was that's a current update on that. We have 6 known illegal dump sites on the Clean Forests list right now, and before the next meeting I anticipate that 3 of those will be completely cleaned up, so we'll try and get to the rest of them before the rest of the summer and keep us right down to 0. All the work that we did last year, myself and particularly the contact at the DNR, Ada Takas, has inspired Benzie County to work with her this year. So it's spreading. So the enthusiasm's spreading, and they're about half through their sites already. So that's where we're at with illegal dumping.
Who does the cleanups on that specifically?
Me?
Susie goes out into the woods, honestly,
Are
she
you
does.
looking for volunteers or groups that could work with you?
Absolutely. The challenge, and I think this is where working with Ada was great, because I would go out with her, and she has a DNR vehicle or trailers if we might need that. A lot of these sites, as you're probably aware, are not necessary to have 5 or 10 people. It's really just 2 people with a truck and maybe a trailer, grabbing a couch here and a mattress there. And so we'd have, a couple of the days last year, we'd stop and pick up 5 sites. Of course, you discover 3 more on the way and pick those up too. But I think that's what the challenge is that you really have to have kind of flexibility and the ability to just run and grab stuff without a big effort. Now, the big cleanups we did, where we had 20 people, 25 people, those were, I would say, exceptions to the rule. But yeah, a lot of times it's me, and I love it.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Onto the agenda.
What's that?
Approve the agenda.
Oh. Anything? Okay.
No one's raised their hand.
I would move that we approve the agenda as stated.
I'll support.
Is there any discussion on the agenda at all? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Onto the consent calendar. Again, you're on, Lana.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission staff or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file Grand Traverse County drain projects. 2, drain code basics. 3, Conservation District monthly report. 4, Road Commission monthly report. 5, news from Michigan State University Extension. 6, Resource Recovery Manager's report. Approval, none.
Is there anyone that would like an item removed from the consent calendar? Ron?
A1.
Okay. Anyone else? Audience or staff?
I would move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of number A1, please.
I'll support.
Moved by Crawford, support by Max Bauer. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have no special orders of business, so on to items removed from the consent calendar. Receive and file A1. On to Commissioner Klaus.
I just would like to state that it'd be nice on these new Board of Determination drains if they can be held in the evening so that more of the public can get to them. That's all I've got to comment on.
I think Kevin and I had that conversation all the way to town tonight. I was in my truck and he was in his office, so.
Oh, okay.
And I asked the same, Kevin McEllier, County Drain Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I asked the same question of my attorneys. Can we hold these meetings at nighttime so they're easily attended by hardworking citizens? And the response was, no matter when we hold them, there's always a complaint. So it's commonly found that people can take an hour off of work to get a haircut or other non-threatening life and death challenges. So also on that note then, so I did ask to hold them at night, and then also the most efficiency and the best economics for the citizens in this process was to get the most qualified, efficient, best value attorneys and consultants for the process. So we had to rack back-to-back all 3, actually there were 5 meetings at that time. We're left with 3 more to do. So we'll again hold them back-to-back. What I envision is perhaps starting at 4 o'clock. They run about 2.5 hours each meeting. We'll do them back-to-back. The final one will get done at 11:30. I know I'll take some arrows for that late meeting, but I hear your request. Commissioner Johnson said that as well, too. I've heard that from a number. So we're going to do our best this time around.
Thank you. And you mean start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
I'll move to receive and file the Grand Traverse County drain projects, and I appreciate your attempting to accommodate, Kevin.
My
Support.
pleasure.
Support.
All those in favor?
Discussion, please.
Discuss.
The only discussion I have, the other item that I talked to Kevin about a little bit was, and I understand the drain code changed, which we've all been made aware of, was when we have the road commission as the principal petitioner to create these drains, you know, we have to even be that much more aware of the fact that we need to make all the information available to the citizens, because the road commission is asking for these drainage districts, but they're not going to be paying for it. The citizens in that community are going to be paying for it. So we need to make very, very sure that we make everyone available, make every bit of information we can available to them prior to signing a special assessment district.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
the Road Commission does pay for some of it. Thank you. It's not just the citizens, it's divvied up according to the drain code, the law. So they, in fact, the Road Commission, if they do ask for a petition for a drain, they're equivalent to 100 people. So their interests are the interest of our citizens. They want to do things preventatively, and and they do pay their portion.
No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
On to the department action items. The first is from Administration and Finance, the county staff report. Were there any comments at all on that? Okay, it stands as presented. Unfinished business, the presentation of the preliminary energy assessment by Johnson Controls. I know they are here. Welcome back.
Yes, hello. How's everybody?
Great.
I have with me Bill Witchell. He is a project development engineer with Johnson Controls. My name's Dave Garrels, by the way, Johnson Controls. Bill has been with the organization for 20 years and has done over 60 projects with Johnson Controls inside performance contracting. So in a nutshell, why we're here is we're gonna go through this preliminary audit that we did. Casey and Jack out of Danny's group were the ones that took us around, and they're outstanding. It was much appreciated how they opened up every door for us and let us poke around inside the buildings, and pretty insightful as far as the intelligence that they provided for us. And to recap why we're here. We came into your organization to identify energy savings opportunities for you guys to get new stuff inside your buildings, i.e., HVAC, potential IT, facility improvement measures, things like that, and to do it in a self-funded manner through energy savings. You guys are already paying utility organizations X amount of dollars. If we make your buildings more efficient, we'll be able to capture those savings for you, and then you guys can reinvest into the buildings. And like any other entity that we work with, you guys are dealing with deferred maintenance with dwindling budgetary funds. So as I go through this, and everybody has a packet, and I can run through this fairly quickly, and then open it up to questions and answers. There's some pages that I'll skip here, but performance contracting, it eliminates risk for our clients in two ways. Johnson Controls fixes the installation price for the entire project when the agreement is signed, so there's no cost overruns. That's a big part of this. And then we guarantee that projected utility and operational savings work will occur. Otherwise, we'll cut the county a check. But the operational and utility savings need to occur for you guys to be able to self-fund a project, okay? We guarantee cost savings and performance, long-term accountability, time compression in construction, reducing operating costs, and we improve leverage of energy dollars spent. We've executed about 100 projects in the state of Michigan. We got about $125 million in guaranteed savings inside Michigan. We work a lot with local government and K-12 education districts in and around the state of Michigan. What we found in here is, and Bill will get into this, but we found about almost $3.9 million in energy savings / waste inside the facilities over a 15-year period. And that would fund about a $2.7 million project. Now, this is a preliminary assessment of us looking at your utility bills, Casey and Jack taking us through your facilities, and us taking some pictures, which is in this report, and Bill going through utility bills and identifying where potential opportunities are. It's a 10,000-foot overview. Typically, that number can increase as we dig into your buildings and get more granular inside a project. And let me say that we don't always find energy savings. Bill and I went to Kalamazoo College and did the same exercise here and could not identify a project. And we've done it in different school districts in and around the state too, where sometimes you find them and sometimes buildings are running so efficient that we can't build a project out of it. Here, there's definitely a project at about almost $3.9 million in savings. The buildings that we audited was the courthouse, the Hall of Justice, here the Government Center, the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, the County Jail, the Civic Center, Public Services, the New Health Services, Woodmere Law Enforcement, the Sheriff's Storage Facility, and Danny's Facilities Shop over there by the Civic Center. Real quick snapshot on Johnson Controls. We're a $44 billion company, been around since 1885. Bill and I are in the building efficiency group, but we also are heavily into automotive and sector, as well as power solutions and new battery technologies out there. Bill, I'm going to let you go through with the energy savings analysis, what you found, and talk through that a little bit. We're on page, for the commissioners, we're on page 6.
The annual gas cost, we looked at 380,110 square feet. The annual fuel cost for that was 178,219. Electric cost was 473,894. And going through the buildings, I figure that utility-wise we can save about $201,000 a year, or about 28% reduction. And that's kind of across the board. That's a combination of electric, gas, and water. And sewer. Well, yeah, water and sewer.
28%.
This is your current spends, and if you notice, it's impossible to read up there, but if you notice in the book, some of the buildings are grouped together because the buildings on this campus, the Hall of Justice has its own gas meter, the rest of the buildings are on one gas meter, and they're all
that
on,
microphone moves.
I think I was moving around too. And they're all on one electric meter. So that's why there's two columns that have some of the buildings, and then the Hall of Justice has a separate line of gas all by itself. The rest of the buildings, they each had their own gas, electric, and water. It was just on this campus that they were grouped together. And the top one is the current usage, and the second one is where we think we can take these buildings from what we've seen so far.
So you guys have about a $726,000 yearly energy spend. We would reduce that to about $5.25, and you'd realize about $200,000 in savings that would be applied towards a project.
Annually.
Dan? Yes, sir.
Thanks. This is a kind of a 15-year commitment, is that right?
Yes.
When I look at these buildings that you looked at, let's see, where's that list of them? Okay. Page 4. Okay. The prosecuting attorney, I'm just thinking ahead, 15 years. Prosecuting attorney, county jail, Woodmere law enforcement. those three could be torn down or not used in the next 5 or 10 years. So how do you handle it when the building's gone, or we're using a new building, or we abandon the building?
Yeah, that'll be a decision that you guys make so we're in a preliminary audit right now, and this is what we were told to look at.
Okay.
That'll be a decision from the county to say, 5 years from now, is it going to be there, or are we going to be using that building?
You could say, hey, we don't want to do anything that doesn't pay for itself in 5 years in this particular building. Or you could say, we think it'll be 10, I mean, we could adjust it.
We can customize
Yeah,
it
we
a
could
little bit.
customize it. I mean, this is just looking at an overall, 15 years for everything. But if you had a building you think is going to be gone in 5 years, I mean, we walked the old health services building also, but we didn't have any utility bills for it, so we didn't have anything to compare to. But, we could also talk about that one if we needed to, but it doesn't sound like you know exactly what you're going to do with it yet. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's going to undergo major renovations, we could maybe make a few recommendations, that could save some energy, but we probably wouldn't be involved in, the actual project.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Dan, that's why these are co-authored as well. So we'll dig into John and his team, and Danny and his team, and you guys as well, to figure out, okay, what does it look like 10, 15 years down the road as you guys plan and develop?
Yeah. I think if the prosecuting attorney is still there in 10 or 15 years, they'll
I
have
sure
committed
hope not.
suicide.
I'm not going to be here.
Well, we're-
Well, we can move him into the work release facility.
Oh, there we go.
Little humor there.
That wouldn't really be a step up, would it?
Well, you haven't been in that house. Oh, you have.
I have, yes, I have. I haven't been in the next one, but
Could be in the river. in
the next
5
one
years.
comes with like a couple of portables from a school, so,
Yeah, could be in the river.
That's the old work release facility.
okay.
Yeah.
Page you on.
I'm on page 8. I have a list of improvements for all the buildings. They're slightly different for each building. I'm not going to read through all of them. Basically, we cover, several different areas. Lighting for each building, controls for each building, and what we would do with the controls if they're changed, or what we could do with the existing controls and changes. Building envelope and water conservation, and then some of the buildings, there was a mechanical item or two that we could do also. So basically, we covered each one of the buildings with that. I don't think there's any we really need to hit.
If you touch on controls a little bit, each building has a different system.
Yeah, that was one of the things we found a little odd, is I don't think there's any two buildings that have the same type of control system. There's one that's almost all pneumatic, there's another one that's a tritium system, there's another one that's an old Barbara Coleman system, there's another one that was Digitech that I'd never even heard of before, and it's kind of like lowest bidder always got the controls, so there's not one panel that you can sit down and look at all the buildings together. So most of the time these days you see a centralized system where you can get alarms from each building, and somebody remotely could troubleshoot what's wrong in the building and know who needed to go there, whether you send the electrician, whether you send...
Well, Casey's the keeper
Casey.
of knowledge on all your controls, so nobody else knows what he knows.
So we want to pray for his continued good health.
Chris, you want to pray for his continued good health, because that's a gap. If something happens, someone else, he's the only one that knows the intricacies of each system versus standardizing.
At the public service building, there's an obsolete carrier system, and whenever he can find parts or has spare parts, he tucks them away because there are no parts available.
Oh.
You're getting down to a thing where you might look on
nice?
eBay and you might find it, or you might not. It's just, if somebody's tearing out a system, a lot of times they'll sell those parts on eBay, but that's a real iffy way to keep a building running.
I think that speaks to how great a job facilities has been doing with keeping this stuff
I would say
running.
that. We've got nice-looking mechanical rooms, the stuff is kept up nice, we're not seeing, we've seen all ranges of mechanical rooms, stuff that's never been taken care of. Your equipment is taken care of, they're doing a good job with what they've got. But what they've got, some of it's obsolete, kudos to them for being able to keep it running.
If I may ask a question.
Yes.
Sure.
for the Civic Center, is it, because I don't see it listed, anything with,
Oh,
in the pool area as far as a air
11.
handler or anything like that?
Page
Page
11,
11,
I put a couple of things in here. I put in investigate saltwater pool because I know you've had problems with chloramines in that pool like forever. You know, the smelling the chlorine just above the water. And I put down liquid pool cover, but I mean, it depends what you're gonna do with the pool. I mean, we could either look at more or we could look at less. I know the Dectron unit is quite old and probably, I mean, they're a reasonably complicated piece of equipment and they don't tend to have a long life. But there's also not a lot of savings with replacing one.
I mean, even though I've been on record to not support the pool, you know, moving forward, if we decide to go with something like this, it might be an opportunity to wrap something in there for the air handler at significant savings, so.
I have kind of a broad scope question, as you see a lot of facilities and are experts in this. What stands out to you as some of the things that are extreme that we may need to think about in the nearer future than others?
Probably that carrier control system, the Barber-Coleman control system. I mean, some of those, just because they're antiquated enough, they're going to be very difficult to find parts for. The Barber-Coleman one is pre-digital. It's an electronic system. So it's before computers. You know, it's got a time clock, you know, an old mechanical time clock.
And where is that located at?
Oh, you would ask that. Hey, you know what?
Was it in the jail?
No, that's mostly pneumatic.
I was wondering if there was a particular
I'm thinking
facility
I'm thinking
that
it
maybe
might,
stood
that one
out.
might have been at the historical courthouse.
Okay.
You do have it at the historical courthouse.
Okay. Okay. I can't always remember because I've seen a lot of buildings and I take a lot of pictures.
No, I understand, not to put you on the
Yeah.
spot. I just thought in your wide knowledge of this, does something stand out
Well,
that,
none of your equipment, probably that Dectron unit is one of the ones that would be closest to failure. Maybe the chiller for the ice rink, because it's, you know, it's got a lot of age on it. And typically those air-cooled chillers, after a few years, there's copper tubes that run through there, and they run through a metal end plate. And there's just enough vibration that after 15 or 20 years, they start rubbing holes in themselves. And then you'll find, you know, you start getting leaks. I don't think you're at that point with that one yet, but it's of an age where you could expect that, you know, to start to happen.
and then the pool Dectron, we were aware of that one.
Lisa, if I may,
Oh,
going,
and you've got compressors on top of the
Hall of Justice.
Hall of Justice.
We did
Yeah,
address
you-
that last week.
Yeah, well, but I mean, it's the second or third time they've failed.
True.
So either it's lightning strikes, or there's an issue with the way the system was put in originally. Maybe it's not returning oil, maybe it's flooding itself with refrigerant, washing the refrigerant
So,
out of the compressors.
let me
the
hear
oil out
you.
of the compressors.
we're replacing this, but you're,
Well, if
see,
it's not the first time, so it's probably going to happen again.
I see.
If it was lightning, there's not a lot you can do about it.
True.
If it was how the system was set up and it's not returning the refrigerant properly or something like that, then it'll happen again because of that. But I mean, without really looking at it, there's not a way to tell.
Okay, can I go back to the ice chiller?
Sure.
Approximately what does a new ice chiller cost?
Oh, you're talking to the wrong guy. Our project manager's not here. He might have a clue, but I don't have a clue.
Okay, but go back to it and refresh my memory, what you're recommending for that ice chiller, if anything.
I would probably look at a newer screw-type chiller instead of the one with the reciprocating compressors, because they can speed them up and slow them down and vary it to the load instead of having compressors kick on and off. So you wind up with an energy savings doing that.
Okay, there's a specific reason I'm asking this, and it is primarily because in 2016, we are, our lease with the Friends of Ice, who run our ice arena, is going to be up for renewal. And this is all something that I think the county board, as well as perhaps the Parks Board, as well as the Facilities Department, could take into consideration. That's why I'm asking the question.
You mean to include it in your new lease, or to include it? more of a charge to maybe take care of something like that, or what?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It would be a board discussion, and it's certainly not a discussion I'm prepared to have right now, but this is extraordinarily helpful as we look forward.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was there any other questions for?
Before Dave boots me out of the way.
No, we're looking for pictures.
They're down just a little bit farther. Oh, yeah, there you
I
go.
think Dave is back.
Let me try this again. Operational savings overview. That's part of Danny's group right there. So if we come in and we do a lighting project, chances are for the next few years you're not going to have a lot of bulb stock. We can look at some of your current agreements. You have overlapping agreements. One of the organizations we worked with had a lot of telephone expenses of POTs, plain old telephone lines that they were being charged inside their county, and they didn't have any lines, but they're still being charged for them. So we can take a look at some of those agreements and identify some savings as well. Security and fire, insurance premiums, things like that. This is a way for, inside Danny's group that as we renew and get you new equipment inside the facilities, their time can be allocated in other places other than, putting Band-Aids on equipment all day long. So that's what this operational savings overview is. And that's something that we would sit down with Danny and his group and say, what's a reasonable number that you guys are spending on parts and pieces and trips to Granger or wherever. So we would take a look at those savings as well inside a project. Bill, when we went through, we took a lot of photos of the facility, so this will give you guys some idea of some of the things that we're looking at.
In this first one, I was just really capturing things that were lighting, the metal halide fixtures over at the Hall of Justice outside that shine up on the building. We could replace that with an LED that uses about half the wattage. Some of the county still has T12 lamps, the older style T12 lamps with magnetic ballast. That could either be changed to T8s or LED, either one.
Timers.
Yeah, and that's in the sheriff's storage. We went in there, there was nobody there, and the lights were on. We thought, well, we could put a switch with a timer on it, so when somebody comes in, they can either push 2 hours, 4 hours, or 6 hours, and have just the lights go off after that amount of time. And the pool still has 500 watt incandescents for underlights. We could replace that with a much lower wattage LED and get the same amount of light into the pool. The next one, really most of your boilers are newer. The one at the Woodmere at the Law Enforcement Center, they're an atmospheric type boiler, which is fairly inefficient. Those should probably be replaced with a condensing type boiler that's a much higher efficiency. Public service building, the condensing units are as old as the building, so they've, usually the useful life on those is about 15 years, and they've been in there, I think, since 90. That was built in 95, I think, maybe something like that. So they've done good to get that much life out of them. The other one's the picture of the Hall of Justice. The compressor, the unit compressors have failed in. And in the jail, there's still 2 water-cooled condensing units for the walk-in cooler and the walk-in freezer. Basically what that is it uses city water, it runs it through once, and it dumps it down the drain, instead of having an air-cooled condensing unit. So those use a lot of water. That's one spot. You can put an air-cooled unit in there to replace the water-cooled unit and save all that water and sewer charge. The last one is different control panels. The pneumatic compressor in the jail. The next one, it's a pneumatic control panel. There's not really a problem with pneumatics. They work, but they have to be fiddled with. They need to be tuned and adjusted fairly often. Casey knows how to do that and seems to be doing a good job of it, but it's awfully hard to find somebody anymore that works with pneumatics. I mean, there's less and less of those guys out there. The next one is the Barbara Coleman electronic one, and the last one is that Carrier Comfort Zone one.
You have no more parts.
Yeah, you can't get parts. Well, I probably could for the Barbara Coleman one, but I mean, it still seems to work, so.
And the cash flow. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and again, this is just a high-level overview, and Dan, to your point, what buildings would we truly look at, and as you guys consider which ones are going to be replaced. But based on what we saw, total project cost is $2.7 million. The savings over a 15-year cash flow is $3,882,000. We plugged in a number of 2% financing. Now, if we go further down the path with this and look at energy conservation bonds, we could look at 0 to 0.5% financing, but we use 2% in this cash flow. We used a utility rate increase of 3%, operations savings of 3%, and service cost of 3%. So utilities typically go up 3% a year. The operational savings of parts and pieces that you guys have to buy, we figured in 3% increase in prices of those per year. And then the service cost increase is the guarantee of us having measurement and verification folks coming on site and making sure that we're matching the guarantee when we put these projects together. We plugged in year 0 in the far left-hand column of annual energy savings. We plugged in a number of $50,000 in rebates. We turnkey that for you. So as part of the service, when we put these projects together, our project assurance engineers will come in and they will submit all the rebates for lighting and controls and any other thing that we can find. Variable speed drives, yeah, and all those checks will come to the county. Okay, so we'll have to identify those so your person in accounting will realize what those checks are when they're coming in. Birch Run Public Schools, I think at the end they got in around $90,000 in rebates, and those change. I think Bob, you probably know a little bit about that, but rebates can change on a yearly basis. Year 1, so in the cash flow, year 1 of annual energy savings of $201,000. It goes down to year 15, and we're showing $3,793,000 in energy savings alone. And then we plug in the annual operational savings in the next column over, and then the third column, that takes us to total program savings of $3,882,000. The annual program cost, that's your 2% financing. We're figuring at $3.1 million over the so you're going to reduce your energy spend. You're going to capture those dollars and pay for the note. Annual service cost is the fee to go ahead and measure and verify the project to make sure that you guys are not that we're meeting our savings guarantee. And then the cash flow at the end of 15 years, the county in this instance would be saving $621,000 would be going to your general fund, bottom line. So we would fund a $2.7 million project, and at the end of 15 years, $621,000 would be going to general fund of excess savings. Now you can take that and build additional scope inside the project of, hey, Dave and Bill, we want to plug in, we have a wish list item of this department or that department where we want to capture those dollars and spend it there and have your cash flow go to 0, or you could have excess cash flow go into your general fund. Any questions? Yes.
So the annual service cost is only for the first 5 years. Does that mean that after those years you no longer measure, or the guarantee is only for the first 5?
You can go for 15 years. We typically go 5 years on these because once the lighting is done, we know that the savings are going to be there. I qualify kind of like an insurance policy. Do you need it for the entire 15 years, or after 3 years, after 5 years, are you satisfied that you guys are seeing the savings? We can guarantee it for the 15 years. Typically, we do it for 3 to 5.
And we've had customers that see the value in it, but don't want to pay the full amount, so they'll have our guy come out like on a consulting basis. They'll look at the utility bills, still give you recommendations, but not have the guarantee at a reduced cost. That's the guarantee, and a lot of customers will drop it after a couple of years. They're seeing the savings, they've learned what we do to do it, and they just feel that they can continue that on themselves. It's good for us when people do that because we can come back in another 10 years and then probably pick up another project. But,
Covenant Healthcare stayed on site and used us for forever. And,
10 years?
yeah, and that person on site continually identified opportunities within the hospital, and then we built a list off that and created a project. Ann Arbor Public Schools, we had someone there for 18 years on site, and I think we did 6 phases and $20 million of work with them over 18 years, as we continued to, technology's got, more efficient and new things came on the market, so. Okay?
Okay. Anytime I can put $621,000 in the bank, I'm going to try to do that. However, as Dr. Lathrop mentioned, we are starting to look ahead as to whether or not we're going to continue to utilize certain buildings. So, obviously, the board is not prepared to have a discussion on this tonight. We would have to schedule this for another evening. If the board decides to move ahead, and again, I like $621,000 in the bank. If the board decides, well, we're only going to do the governmental center and the historical courthouse, because obviously the historical courthouse probably is ripe with opportunity for savings, but let's just say we've decided to do that. You do understand that we still must go through a bidding process, and you may not be the bidder that receives the bid.
Absolutely.
Okay, as long as you understand that. The next question I have for you is really what is our next step if the board has a discussion and chooses to move ahead on certain projects?
Yeah, so Chris, on page 22, and let me answer. So I got a business process timeline here that I'll show you.
Okay.
But as you guys, the $621,000, these numbers can move.
Yes.
So as we are moving from building to building, we're capturing savings from different areas and essentially throwing them into one big bucket, and voila, there's your $2.7 million project. As we determine which buildings stay and which ones aren't going to be impacted, that number's going to change because some areas generate greater savings than others. So again, this is a preliminary process of 9 buildings that we audited, and this is what we're seeing. Now, once we come in and start hanging data loggers and bringing engineers on site and understanding intuitively how your buildings operate, runtime hours, setback temperature points, all the mechanical things that Bill and his team will identify where there's opportunities, then that's how we build these projects.
So I'm looking on page 23, at the top of page 23, because we've obviously gone through all the steps on page 22. The next step would be for the board to decide upon a comprehensive analysis.
Yep, so I sat down with these dates with John Syke, okay, and these dates are based on board meetings, okay, and they're a guess on our part. But commitment to move forward, 7/29. So at the end of the month, upon the preliminary approach, Johnson Controls will present the preliminary report to the board. Upon board approval to move forward with the performance contracting process, Grand Traverse will follow applicable codes for bidding and advertise RFQ. If that's your procurement process, I'm just guessing this.
Yeah.
So RFQ goes out on the street a couple weeks and then hits the state's website if that's how you guys operate up here. Okay, and then comprehensive analysis would be due the end of September. So upon selection of the ESCO Energy Service Company, so whoever responds to the RFQ, from the request for quotation, Grand Traverse will authorize a signed project development agreement. So that's where the county really essentially has skin in the game, that we're going to bring in a team of engineers and we're going to spend 30, 60 days inside your buildings, and that's where I'm talking about hanging data loggers and bringing engineering teams in. And everything at this point has been on Johnson Controls costs. So once you guys determine that you're going to move forward and the Energy Service Company has been selected, the ESCO, then there's a project development agreement that's signed, and then we will deliver the proposal on November 11th at the next board meeting.
I've got another question for you. let us assume that Ace Electric Company is the low bidder. Ace Electric Company may not be guaranteeing the savings.
Correct.
Okay, so that is not necessarily, this doesn't go, you are basically saying you will guarantee the savings, but if we go ahead with a project and choose another bidder, those savings are not guaranteed?
Yeah, I think, Chris, what will happen.
And I would assume that makes sense,
Yeah,
but I'm just curious.
inside the RFQ, you guys are going to have specific language as to what the qualifications of a bidder is going to be. You know, do you have a $44 billion company behind you that can cut the county a check for X amount of dollars if we miss on the savings guarantee?
Okay.
Okay, so there'll be specific language inside the RFQ.
As long as I understand, thank you.
Yep. So I got final proposals due on November 11th, and again, these are based on board dates that we're guessing. And then present solution, then in that evening, Will come in with a binder about this thick, and clearly we won't go through it in this type of meeting, but it is a detailed study of every facility improvement measure that we are going through, what the savings are going to be down to the penny, what the cost of the project is going to be budgeted down to the penny, because there are no change orders in this. We're not going to come back at you and say, oh, we missed, sorry, here's your change order for X amount of dollars. You're going to know exactly what equipment and what the process is as far as construction timelines, when we're going to be in their buildings. We will have one project manager on site, so Danny and his team aren't dealing with a lot of different subcontractors, even though there may be subcontractors in here and we may be using local talent in and around Grand Traverse. You're going to have one project manager that Danny or John or whomever will be working with inside this project. Am I missing anything? So that's on November 11th. Approval at the board meeting, we've plugged in a number of December 9th, and then implementation would begin in January of 2016 is how we have this laid out right now. That's it.
Bob.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on it, for the guarantees are only while you have somebody here on site?
Yes.
Okay, so if we, like in year 6, if we say, well, we don't need somebody here, and we find our costs have risen, then there's no guarantee anymore at that point?
Right, unless you decided to keep that person on for the guarantee.
Okay.
Any questions at all?
One more. I think I understood that you're saying that this is going to make it easier on Danny's group, and they're going to have work less on putting Band-Aids on. That's going to save some money, and you accounted for that savings in this report.
We don't ever take manpower savings, because somebody, facilities guys have always got more than enough to do. So if we can relieve the load someplace else, maybe they'll be able to call in one less contractor or something like that, or something. They'll be able to do more, pick up a little more themselves.
Yeah. It just seems like there would be some savings, because...
but we never take the labor savings, because you're still going to, unless you're going to lay somebody off.
You're still paying those employees.
You're still paying the employees.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
We look at material savings,
yeah,
but not the labor savings.
All right, thank you for that.
But there will be new equipment inside the facility, so essentially, I think that it'll help Danny and his group get them to a baseline, Dan, of, okay, now we know what equipment is here, now we know what's next that's going to have to be replaced before long, instead of them running around chasing their tail all day long. So, and as Bill said, the controls are a big deal. With Casey being the keeper of knowledge and having so many different systems in each and every building around here, that is something that you guys really need to think about, because, if and when he retires, not everybody knows how to run those systems, and you're going to be, I think Alyssa said, kicking the can down the road with deferred maintenance, so.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sonny?
Hi, Sonny.
I guess the one point that I would make, we have a capital improvement committee. I would suggest that we convene a meeting of the capital improvement committee, have them review this information as soon as possible, and
hear from them. You know, they're the ones that have set forth our, you know, our 5-year maintenance plan and, you know, trying to project where we're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So I'd like to have them weigh in with this report. You know, I certainly, you know, in reading the information that you've provided, you know, we all know that we have some buildings that are not efficient. We have some that aren't too bad, but we have some that are pretty bad. And, you know, we need to evaluate, you know, we've already talked about, you know, the Front Street building, the law enforcement center, you know, some of the buildings that we know aren't really good. So, you know, we need to evaluate whether or not long-term we want to continue to maintain those buildings or whether we would be better served by looking at other facilities for some of those services. You know, the prosecutor's office, you know, we have a lot of shortcomings in that building, to say the least, you know, and not all of the shortcomings in that building are going to be cured by us making it more energy efficient. So, you know, I think the Capital Improvement Committee would be appropriate to be convened soon and look at that. John Syke kind of chairs that. We can ask John if he would agree with that, or.
Yeah, he's absolutely. Was there any other questions?
No, I mean, to tag on to that, I agree with that, because I think, you know, as we look down the road, I think you and I disagree on the size of the jail, but I think we're going to have to do something with the jail before long and those kind of things. So I think it would benefit it to look at as a committee to say, you know, moving forward, we may not have this building, so.
Yes, Chris.
At the same time, I didn't take a look real close at the jail, but I happened to be flipping through here, and I see that one of the things they could do is wrap pipes or something like that. I mean,
mechanical insulation?
Yeah,
Insulate pipes, thank you. But if there's something that is low-hanging fruit, I would greatly appreciate the Capital Improvement Committee taking a look at and taking that into consideration, because building a new jail, as Dr. Lathrop and I know, is going to be, it's a lot more money than we have, a whole lot more. So, anyway.
Well, just to wrap it up, we do have a suggested date of July 29th, which is our final board meeting of the month. It's, I believe, 3 weeks because of the way the Wednesdays are set up this month. Would the board like to have that on the agenda for us to discuss the next step regarding this? And would that give enough time for the Capital Improvement Committee to meet in a 3-week time?
John is nodding yes.
Okay. So what we'll do is go ahead and add this to our agenda July 29th. And obviously, since we all just received this when we got here today, nobody's had a lot of time to check it out or ask too many questions, but we certainly invite you back at that time as we discuss it after we've had a chance to do our reading and our Capital Improvement Committee met. And I think without any further questions, just thank you for your time. And
thank you so much.
Thanks, nice job.
Thanks, man.
I would, one more thing, I would like everybody to have Dave's telephone number, so if they want to call and ask Dave questions rather than wait for the July 29th board meeting, I think that would probably be helpful.
You know, if I was any good, I'd have a ton of business cards on me, and I don't think I do. But you guys got my number? 616-308-7330. And again, I'm Dave Gerels, Gehrls, spelled like it sounds.
And could you give us your credit card number?
Yeah, you ready?
just a social
Yeah, really. And the rest of your personal information.
Number, but it won't help you much.
Help me not.
It's probably on Google. Just
meeting. Give me a second.
No, thank you so much.
Okay,
we
thank
really
you very much.
Okay.
We are on to John and the relocation of Commission on Aging and MSU Extension study.
Good evening, John Syke, Planning Director for Grand Traverse County. Before I present the memo or the study, I just want to clarify some things before I proceed. And this is a study with a recommendation. This is not a proposal. This is not a request. What I was trying to do in this is to provide you with some broader context. If we just focused on the lower level of the governmental center, which you originally requested, I wanted at least to have you get a better sense of how does that relate to if you were to do new construction or something of that nature. So it's just really to kind of broaden the context. This was we received direction from you to look at the utilization of the lower level of this building, the governmental center, to relocate Commission on Aging and MSU Extension into that lower level. And so this is really an extension of or implementation of the long-range capital improvement plan that you adopted earlier this year. Through this process, I did also work with Danny Brown, Facilities Management Director. Also worked with Ray Kendra, who's been an architect for several projects for the county, including the Health Services Building. I did also consult with Georgia Durga from the Commission on Aging, and then Jennifer Berkey and Jenny McKellar from MSU Extension. So they were very helpful in terms of understanding what some of their needs are to get a better understanding of what are the possibilities for at least looking at the lower level of the governmental center. As you know, the West Front building is, from my understanding, is technically owned by the city of Traverse City, but it's occupied, at least the western portion, by the county for the two departments. Some of the mechanicals have been divided, but from my understanding, there's still some relationship between that west side of the building and that east side, which is the city fire department. That's been one of the problems. This is a former police station, so it has some challenges. If you've been in the building, it has different levels, staircases and so forth, which aren't necessarily conducive to customers that are approaching that enter into the building. If you're going to MSU Extension, you actually have to go through the Commission on Aging office to get to MSU Extension. So it's not necessarily the best layout for customers, but probably for both departments. There's also some considerable costs in this building. There's about a $34,000 annual cost in terms of operating and maintaining this building. And there's also, just so you know, in the 5-year capital plan for improvements in county facilities, there are some significant improvements that are planned over the next couple of years in that building. So looking at a few different options, obviously the first one we were looking at, which is what your primary interest was, is the lower level of this building, the governmental center. And we had Ray Kendra do a design. You have that in your memo in terms of a layout. It has some challenges in that lower level. For one thing, trying to utilize the natural light. So there was an interest in trying to make sure both departments have some amount of using the natural light on the south side of the building. So that's where the most of the reconfiguration of that floor occurred. There's also some challenges with that space. First of all, there's an agreement between the county and the city throughout this building about shared space. In some cases, there are dedicated county spaces. In some cases, there are city spaces. In that case, there's a lot of shared space. The cafeteria area and some other the storage areas are all shared. So if you were going to do anything within that lower level, you're going to have some discussions with the city. Probably would make sense to look at this whole building because a lot of things have changed over the years, and I'm not sure that agreement has adjusted with those changes over time. The layout, and I think Ray did a really good job. I know he definitely tries to eke out every little inch and make it most effective in terms of laying out of the offices and so forth. It really kind of matches really what both departments currently have right now. There would be some savings in terms of maybe some shared spaces for like meeting rooms and so forth, but it doesn't really allow for additional space if those operations were to expand. It also really impacts some of the departments in this building that have storage in that lower level right now. It would really eat up a lot of that storage space. There really wouldn't be much storage left in this building whatsoever. There would be the cafeteria, which is currently used by employees and visitors to the building. That could be relocated to the old EOC room, but that would would not necessarily be what it's currently configured. It'd be something much smaller. There's the tunnel there that goes to the jail. That would be extended outwards, so there's actually a separate entrance, so you're not going through the cafeteria in order to get to that tunnel and so forth. The other part of this is access to customers. Certainly the Commission on Aging want to make sure that their customers are easily able to access their department. This building, while it does have elevators and everything like that, is not necessarily the most easy to access from getting into the lower level in terms of really finding your way and so forth. Also, there's the issue of parking. There are the staff people that would move here. We currently have a deficit of parking on this campus of about 50 spaces. There would be roughly about 23 additional employees that would be now in this building, plus there would be the visitors and the staff people with those organizations that have to come for meetings and so forth. So it would add some more of our challenges. The cost that Ray put together in terms of, and you saw in the memo there, at least a small version, and I do have larger versions of the layout that he did for the lower level, would come to a cost of about $790,000. So that would be to really reconfigure it. Some of the challenges are down there. You do have some block walls and so forth that would have to be reconfigured and so forth. So that gives you a sense, and that really looking at it, it didn't seem like this would really be a good option to consider. It may get you some short-term, but for your costs, it seems like we should be looking at maybe some other solutions. The other two are really just more for some thoughts in terms of as you go down in the future, looking at this issue. We looked at the Health Services building, which does have about a 5,000 square foot area that could be an addition. It was designed to allow for an addition. We thought that that really wouldn't make sense to add these two operations in there, mainly because the Health Services building, while it's comfortable right now, at some point in the future, 15, 20 years down the road, may need that space for an addition, and it really should probably stay for the purpose of Health Services. We did look at then a new building. There was, when the Public Services building, that was not built by the county, but it was built to have a duplicate building kind of mirror it to the east of that. So there is kind of a area east of the Public Services building that could be a site for a new building. We're recommending really not to go in that location, mainly because there's a lack of visibility, plus it would abut a residential neighborhood to the east of there, and didn't really think that made sense. Now, there was some discussion that I had with some people looking at the Public Services building, which, if you've been in that building, is not really designed for pretty generic county office operations. It was an executive building for an energy company, and so there's a lot of kind of wasted space in there, wide hallways and so forth. It does have, while we didn't look at it, there may be that potential to look at that building, reconfigure it internally, and maybe add an addition as needed, and really kind of to really maximize that building. And the third option was really just when that property was purchased, the 20 acres on Lafreniere Road was really, at least from my understanding in reviewing different records of the county, was to provide a space for a future jail at some point. But there is enough room there, and that's why the Health Services building there is to place other buildings at that location. So we looked at, there's a kind of conceptual layout that we did, and did actually a couple of years ago, even before the Health Services building was completed. And that does have some space along Lafreniere. The utilities have been put in place so that there can be additional expansion in that campus. Obviously, at some point, maybe jail, if that ever occurred, the utilities are there. But the idea is that if you were to build a new building, essentially it's about double the cost of doing what you would do in the lower level of this building. And that's just to really kind of give you a basic idea. Most likely, if you were going to build something, you probably would build it a little bit bigger. There may be other needs, so that price could be in a range of 1.6 to maybe 2 million. And again, that's not what I'm recommending, or in terms of proposing that. It's really to kind of give, our thoughts in terms of as you go forward, I think in where you're at right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I have seen how some of these conversations have gone forward, and a lot of times you kind of end up going in circles. Sometimes you end up right back where you started, and I'm just trying to give you some information so that maybe in a year or two down the road, when it's maybe a more appropriate time, that you can at least have a sense of understanding of what those costs might be. Whether there's that location or there's an existing building somewhere that you take advantage of that's somewhere else. But this is just to kind of give you a broad sense of what those options might be.
I'll start with Dan and then Bob.
Okay. Couple questions just to educate me. Public service building, is that where the building department is right now?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I know. This is a stupid question, but what about renting? Are there, I know that, I look out there, there's so many empty big buildings that we could rent. Is renting an option?
That could be something that you investigate. I would say, though, that it seems it's been my observation when the county's had this discussion before, there's been a look at a lot of options. For instance, when the health services building, the old one on Garfield Road, there was originally a need to expand. The dental clinic needed more space, so there was a look at doing an addition. And then it was thought of, well, this building is an old building. It's actually 3 buildings merged together. And so there was a thought, well, we could build a new one cheaper. And then there was a thought of, well, we could look at the old Tom's building where Big Lots is at currently on South Airport Road. But then it kind of came full circle back to a new building on the Lafreniere campus. And I'm not necessarily pushing that as primary solution to it, but I guess what I'm getting at is you can look at some of these alternatives, but I would only suggest that you look at it from a long-term standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of providing, I think, a facility that meets our customers' needs and one that is appropriate for the people that we serve. So I just looking at it not necessarily maybe as a 5-year or 10-year solution, but maybe we should be looking more down the road, 20-year or 25-year solution to what our needs are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good proposal, I guess, but like I said, it started as a simple question of, hey, we got room down in the basement, what can we do with it? And good thing I wasn't eating when I read that, because that $700,000 just for that almost floored me. I mean, it was like, wow, what are they doing down there? So I can get a couple of rednecks in there with $1,000 worth of lumber, but like I said, we just don't have the money right now for any of that, so.
Ron?
You did bring up just a few minutes ago about the old health department building on Garfield. Is that not an option?
It's not an option.
It's rented, it's leased to the PACE program.
Okay, 100%
Yes.
build.
I think it's a 10-year?
Yes.
10-year lease.
Yeah.
And then I looked at that price for finishing that basement. What kind of finishes, are they? I was just, at the Board of Public Works, we just approved to have some roofing done re-roof a house at right around the neighborhood of $500 a square, which is pretty expensive. And I'm just looking at this as quite expensive. I don't know where the numbers come. What are you after for finishes? Were you after just partitions? Does every room, every office need to be a private office?
In some cases, there was a need for private offices. One of the things that we were looking back is when this building had the 3rd floor was renovated, and that was about a $500,000 project. And that was in 2008, 2009, when costs were a lot lower. And that was done at about $54 a square foot. For the lower level here, Ray was looking at a cost of around $83 a square foot, but it would be probably similar finishes. In the 3rd floor, there are some solid walls. In other cases, they're just kind of like these walls and the rest of the building, which are more like partitions. So it's kind of a mix in terms of it.
Christine?
Well, John, I appreciate you coming forward and saying this was not meant to be a proposal. There have been some articles in the paper that have, obviously the headline in the Record Eagle said this is a proposal. I want everybody to know that this started out as a simple discussion. Lisa Kropa went down when she was spending an evening with Central Dispatchers and went down and got a bottle of soda or water, whatever it was, and noticed that the basement was empty. She said, "What can we do with the basement?" I said, well, I'd had at that point a discussion with Mr. Benda, who said to me that MSU Extension is looking down the road and they want more office space. And I said, basically, there is no more additional office space in the shared Front Street building. Commission on Aging is taking up pretty much every square foot they can. And so that is what prompted the discussion. We are going to have to come to a decision. I have to tell you, we are looking at options and people are jumping to conclusions, and I'll tell you, it makes it very, very difficult to have an open conversation and say, well, as Dr. Lathrop just said, well, what about renting an office space? Well, that is an option. As I told the ticker, these are just three of several options that we have. For Commission on Aging, for MSU Extension, they do not have to move together, but at some point, the city may decide, you know what, and I've heard Mayor Estes say this, maybe we ought to sell that piece of property because it's a it's a commercial piece of property, it's on the river, it has value. Now, clearly, the City Commission has not had that discussion, but the mayor has said it out loud. And I want to tell people that this board is going to have this type of discussion on a regular basis as we look ahead. And please, do not jump to conclusions. That's my spiel.
Sonny.
Well, shortly after we had the discussion back in March about this lower unit, one day I was here with Danny Brown and we walked through the lower portion of the building, and there is a lot more storage down there than I had really foreseen that there was. And just kind of walking through to the restroom, to the EOC room, the cafeteria, whatever, there's a lot more storage being utilized down there than I had realized that there was at that time. And then as you step back and you start looking at where the block walls and things are that are in that basement, all of a sudden the usable space, if you will, gets quite a bit smaller. And we've always had the discussion about the parking issue, the access issue down there. I think without question we have to look forward to relocating both Commission on Aging and MSU Extension. Whether they move at the same time to the same place, I don't think I care. At this particular point, I don't think it really matters, but I think we still have to have a credible discussion about relocating both of those two departments. I spoke with John the other day. I personally would certainly like to look at an addition on the Public Services building more than certainly than the Health Department building, because I don't want to touch the Health Department building because the Health Department's going to need that space, whether it be for county health services or whether it be for a veterans clinic or whatever may come down the road. We will need that space without doubt. But one of the things that we've talked about off and on over the years with the Capital Improvement Committee and even at the time when we bought that old Terra Energy building is the amount of common area, if you will, that's in that building that is truly almost wasted space for our use.
It is.
Now, if we were to put an addition on that building and include a portion of remodeling the center section of that building, as part of that, we could gain a lot of usable space in that common area that's there right now. We just simply have to continue to talk about options. But as far as I'm concerned, I would certainly want to look at a remodel addition on the Public Services building long before I talk about another structure there per se, because I think the time will come You know, I predict the time will come that we will relocate the sheriff and the jail there. You know, that's what that property was purchased for. You know, it was the main reason it was purchased for. So I think that time will come. I don't know, you know, I said a long time ago I was staying here until the new jail was built. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to fulfill that because I truly thought we were moving in that direction 10 years ago, and we're still not there, so.
Just pacing yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm not as patient as I used to be, maybe. But I certainly appreciate all the work that John has done here. You know, I think we've really looked at that lower level. There's certainly use for that lower level, but I think one of the things that we probably, the more efficient use of that lower level is to evaluate our storage needs. You know, we have storage needs on this campus and throughout county departments, a lot of them, and we are always trying to find places to put storage. Maybe a more efficient way of storage in that lower level is a better way for us to do things. You know, we don't have to go very far to go to the garage area of the jail, and we find a chain link fence storing records, and the birds are flying in.
Yes,
you know,
I was thinking along those lines, actually.
That's storage that we're required by law to maintain, but we truly are not doing a very good job of it because it's, you know, it's exposed to
it's in the
weather
garage.
and humidities and things when the doors are open. The birds are in there. It's not a good thing to do. So I think our better thing to look at as far as the lower level is an efficiency in storage of county documents, and then if we're looking to relocate Commission on Aging, we look at a facility other than this building.
Is there anyone else? Okay. I want to thank you, John. We need vision and planning in this county more than ever, especially as we look forward with our costs. You can imagine my surprise when I woke up and read the headline, "County to consider new $1.6 million facility." Grand Traverse County Commissioners will consider
This was news to
constructing
us.
a new $1.6 million facility on Lafreniere Road. It says County Planning Director, that's you, John Syke, will present his recommendation to build the facility after analyzing the other options. This is a perfect example to please watch the meetings, contact your county commissioners. We have citizens that did contact our county commissioners for real stories here. Please do not believe what you read in the headlines at all. Contact your county commissioners before you do jump to the conclusion that in the middle of a budget crisis, we are constructing a $1.6 million building. But that being said, planning matters. So I do want to thank you, because when we look at different options, that's how we stop making the same mistakes we've made in the past with these Band-Aids and eliminating the ability to maintain what we build. So I appreciate that. I do hope there is some use for that basement. I feel it's a real waste. So I know Bonnie is always looking for places to put her stuff, but maybe there is a way that, you know, I mean, really, she talks about it a lot more than probably she should.
You know, you could build some closets along the wall there.
Well, that's when she asked us to fund her
cafeteria.
scanning project. But the basement, I think, still has viability in this building to have 1 out of 4 floors empty. You know, it could be a very small department, or maybe, again, MSU Extension has no need to be connected with the Commission on Aging that I'm aware of. So perhaps MSU Extension is a viable option in the basement, as they have different needs than the Commission on Aging does. One question I did have for Georgia, not knowing a lot about your budget, since you are an enterprise fund, is there availability in your budget for looking at being part of the expansion or building a new building? Or is this something that the county general fund is looking at in the future? And I guess my thinking would be the Commission on Aging has really unique needs, and so building a building for their use.
They also have unique legal restrictions as to what we can use the dollars for.
Precisely. So I wondered if those restrictions include things that would include construction on a facility.
This move to Front Street was our first move. We used to be in this building, and when we moved the last time, we had to pay the moving costs, which was, I think, around $2,000. We had to have a mover come and move the furniture part of it. We moved a lot of the stuff ourselves. And facilities came in and built our workstations. We had to buy new workstations to fit the area, and we paid for that. But as far as the renovation part, I'm pretty sure facilities did that. We pay indirect costs to the county, and that was built in, I'm assuming, into those indirect costs. If we were going to go somewhere else, since this was only our first move, we haven't ever moved into a new building where we paid for any of the costs. Our millage right now is used almost all for operational costs. And I think it's restricted to operational costs, but I know that you can go out for capital millages. I don't know the laws or the rules on that, so.
I just wondered about that because I think when and if there is a significant investment made for a building for Commission on Aging, it would be done appropriately and for their use, catered to specific uses, and then hopefully as a long-term project rather than these Band-Aids like an old police office building or an old bank for a law enforcement center and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Dean had his hand up.
Their millage revenue, you know, you did build the garage.
Yeah, we did build a garage.
So their funds could be used for construction of a facility. It would be a county-owned facility. But, you know, if we built a building or constructed a building for them, we would probably enter into a lease agreement where you would pay rent like you are currently doing. So there are a lot of options as to how we go about this, so.
We don't pay rent on our garage, though. We built it all with funds that we raised, and I don't know if we used millage funds or we raised funds or both. I don't remember
I think
that.
it was a combination of both,
Yeah.
some donations, but your dollars can be used to house your operations. There's no issue with that, so.
But I need to jump in here again. We are not building a $1.6 million building with Commission on Aging funds.
No.
We are simply looking at options down the road. That's all.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you, John, helping us look forward. And I think this board, any good board, needs to look a long way down the road and plan and think. I appreciate your input. Usual good job for you, John. Thank you.
I just want to mention that I have an open door policy in my office too, so if anybody has any questions about any memos or anything that I submit, they can contact me. I don't think that
I wasn't worried when I read the article. I knew I didn't even need to contact you because I'm well aware of what's written versus reality. So I looked at my packet, though, to double check that there wasn't a recommendation to construct a building, and I did not see that. So I moved forward with it. I hope that the discussion stays open for the Commission on Aging's new home, MSU extension as well, and for ultimately what we're doing with the city building on Front Street. I think it's important to keep that open.
I think one of the things you have to remember when you talk about the city building on Front Street is you can't talk about that building without talking about the law enforcement center, because that was supposed to be a swap, if you will. You know, the county in turn got that portion, that building for use, and the city police department got a portion, you know, a pretty sizable portion actually, of the law enforcement building on Woodmere. I believe at the time that was planned to be a 5 to 10 year fix, and I think we're past that at this point, or got to be getting pretty close. But and we all know that that's not the most efficient building that we have in the operation either. So, but you can't talk about the Front Street building without talking about the Woodmere building, because the two are tied together in the agreement, which was never,
I meant talking about the inhabitants of the Front Street building.
Which was never signed anyway, so.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We're on to the job description for the Grand Traverse County Administrator. It was located here in our packets as submitted by our contracted HR Director, Paula Segala. This job description was presented after her meeting with the individual members of the Board of Commissioners and discussing their desires for how the job description would be written. Is there any discussion at all on it, or is there agreement with how it was put together? Bob?
No, I mean, I I reviewed this, and I like the way it's worded, and I don't see any major issues with it, so.
Again, just to remind everyone, the main reason for a rewrite of the job description was that our previous administrator held the title of administrator/controller, and as a board, we unanimously decided a while ago that we are seeking applicants for the office of administrator only, not administrator-controller, and therefore it required a rewrite of the job description. And that is it.
I would make a motion that we accept this job description for the Grand Traverse County Administrator as presented.
Support.
Motion by Crawford, support by Wheelock. Any discussion at all?
The only discussion I would have would be that I hope with the adoption of this, this job description, we can advertise.
You're talking about posting? I'm making the
Posting.
motion next, but we need to do that. This is discussion on the administrator's
Exactly.
job description.
Okay.
Dan?
I think it's a great job. Paul did a beautiful job here. And I want to say that this is not the same thing as a contract. This could change depending on who we decide to hire. We might add or subtract different things to that contract. So this is just putting the hook out there. Yeah. This is not an official document that obliges us to do these things. So it's just, you guys agree with me on that?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
And to the motion maker and seconder, could I request that we do it for immediate approval so we can get moving on the following motion that we'll be making?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Since it's for immediate approval, we will do a roll call. Lana?
Okay. Crawford.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lathrop.
Yep.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus.
Yes.
Kropa.
Yes. With that, I will make a motion that we authorize our contracted HR representative to post the position for Grand Traverse County Administrator, effective immediately.
Second?
Christine?
I support the motion. However, I would like to somehow, and I'm happy to make a separate motion, I somehow would like I want the applications to go directly to our contracted HR director. There's a reason for that. First of all, she's going to be placing the advertisement. I want it to go to a P.O. box, primarily because applicants are hesitant historically when they first decide whether or not they're interested in the job. They want that comfort of their applications are not going to be made public. If we see the applications in any way, shape, or form, those applicants, their names, their positions, et cetera, are going to be made public right away. They may, express an interest by applying and then maybe have some questions, and they maybe start some research and talking to, employees, whatever. But this is how we did it with Jen Seaman. We had those applications go directly to her. She was the only person that saw those applications initially. And it allowed applicants a level of comfort in their application process. So I do want to stress that I would like these applications to go to a P.O. box to our contracted HR director who has this expertise. And we'll be placing the ad. Is everybody good with that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the many talents that Ms. Segala has, a long history of doing this, but one thing I'm looking forward to is that she is going to cast a broad net for this. We historically have cast very narrow nets for jobs in Grand Traverse County, and it's time to open it up to more options, and I trust her expertise in this, and that reinforces more the need for the anonymity part of this part. So, since it is for immediate approval, we will need one more roll call.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus,
Yes.
Crawford,
Yes.
Cropa.
Yes. That brings us to the next item of new business, which is Ms. Segala's invoice. If everyone had a chance to look over it, just if there was any, it was a review only, so I reviewed it and it was great, worth every penny.
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve the payment to Paula Segala in amount of,
I don't believe that
or
this is...
we don't need the amount.
Nope,
We just
it has
to-
not gone to
just
claims
approve-
yet.
Just to approve the invoice as it was submitted.
I don't think we need
You
to...
don't want to...
Nope, we're just reviewing
It
it.
says review payment, it says review invoice for payment is the recommendation, so.
Did it go to claims yet?
No.
No,
No, then it can't. Yep.
Move to send it to claims.
we're going to look at it Tuesday at claims, and I don't think we need a motion, because we have to look at everything at claims.
I guess I would make the comment, because I questioned this invoice before. When this invoice first came in last week, there was no explanation of what any of the additional time was. It just simply said consulting and phone calls. So, I asked for a more specific explanation, and Dean has provided us in this discussion a revised billing, and it explains what those other services were.
Can I ask how you saw the invoice, though?
I'm sorry?
It hadn't gone to claims yet. How did you see the invoice?
I asked for it.
Okay.
Okay.
I really don't, until it goes to claims.
Well, I'm not on the finance committee that deals with claims, so I knew that Paula was spending more than the 5 hours that we were contracting her here, so I just simply asked for how much more she was spending.
We didn't contract her for 5 hours, so we contracted her at one price for the first 5 hours and then another
We contracted
price.
her for 5 hours at $600 and then additional hours at $90 an hour.
Right.
So the simple question was, how many extra hours is she spending? And when I submit a bill to a customer, I don't submit a bill that just simply says labor. I explain to them what they do. So when we seen the bill that just said consulting and phone calls, checking my email 3 times a day, I just simply asked what the consulting was about.
Okay, we will move on to...
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
I've had the chance to interact with her, and I do agree that, even though it seems high, she's very effective at what she's doing for right now. So, and there have been instances where her time has been needed, but it is moving towards a resolution for issues that wasn't there before, so.
Dan?
I just think that she's a tremendous value for the money we're spending for this county right now and the things that we're facing. She's an amazing value. And it's really worth every penny to our citizens to engage this very professional, experienced woman in the important future decisions we're going to be making.
Absolutely. Carol?
I recently read an article about another county's search for a county administrator, and they hired a firm to assist them in that search, and I believe it cost well over $20,000, and netted them not a county administrator. Something happened, they didn't cast the net wide enough, they didn't get the applicants that they wanted, so they are back at square one, and they're $20,000 down. So I think to have Paula do this for us is actually going to be quite a deal, because she's very good at what she does. So I have every confidence that she will get an incredible pool of applicants for us.
I believe that's the case as well, and she also has saved us, I'm certain, a tremendous amount of legal bills. And we all can look at her price and know how much our average attorney's costs are, well-versed in that. And she is an amazing deal. She has stepped in and handled employee problems that have lingered over the last year or two that were not dealt with. And I am really impressed with the job that she has done, and grateful that we have the opportunity to have leadership that she's providing an employee relations and also in the search for the new administrator. And we have not talked about this at board level yet, but I am assuming she will also provide the same expertise in replacement for an HR director. And that is priceless for this county. We have problems with that.
Well, I'd like to point out, when we were first talking about the administrator job description, we were going to have a meeting, and we were going to go back and forth on what we wanted to see in a county administrator in the new job description. And I suggested that each of us spend time with Paula, and she scheduled, I think, an hour apiece for each of us, so there's 7 of the hours. Heard our thoughts, and the first try, she has put together what we are all finding a very good, well-written administrator job description. So that is just one example of her outstanding ability.
One question now, where are we, I know this may or may not be in the same topic, but where are we on our search for HR director?
I spoke with Paula about that this afternoon. We have received a number of applications. I don't know exactly how many, but that is one process that we have turned over to her to direct. And what we're proposing at this point in time, and I guess I really don't even want to go into the details, but it's moving forward. We're the original team of employees that was on that or involved in that process. We're thinking about doing something a little bit different, and in fairness to that group, I don't know if Paula has had the opportunity to discuss that change with everyone, so I don't want to.
That's fine. I mean, just
it is
making
moving.
sure it's still moving.
It is moving.
I can summarize it in one sentence, because I called her this afternoon and said exactly what, she said, candidates, she said qualified candidates have been identified, and she left it at that. I said, well, at least I know the process is moving forward, and I know that, she's extraordinary. She knows. Here's an example. So,
It's true.
she knows what we're looking for.
Okay, we will move on to second public comment. Anyone? Look at how Carol's looking at Shirley, and Shirley's not making a change in her expression at all. Okay. We will move on to commissioner committee reports. Does anyone have one?
Neither of my townships have met yet this month because of the date.
Your calendar. Yep, and my stuff has all been canceled.
I met with Fife Lake Village. What day is this?
Today's Wednesday.
Monday, I think it was. And just a routine that they're working. They have some issues with their DDA that they're working through and going through the whole process, and they seem to be on top of it. So, but
Okay, notices and/or announcements. Hey, it's the Cherry Festival. If you want to go down and participate.
Or volunteer.
Or volunteer. Yes, Kristen.
This isn't really so much of a notice or announcement, but I want everybody to know that I did get a call from Michael Walton at the Record Eagle this afternoon regarding the 911 equipment and surcharge. And I explained to him that you have to look, Ron and I spent an hour with Ron and Greg Bird this morning. Ron spent 2 hours with Greg Bird. I had to leave after the first hour. But when you take into account, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of notes. Greg described, and for those who are watching, Greg Bird is our emergency manager. Greg described how when the city and Metro fight a fire together, and they do have a mutual service agreement where they do help each other out. In order to hear each other, what's going on the radios, they have to have two firemen physically standing next to each other. Right now, Greg Bird has got to monitor in the Emergency Response Center for the Cherry Festival. He's got to monitor, I think he said Adam 1, Adam 3, and something else, because we've got radios and communications throughout this county that cannot talk to each other. Now, you take into consideration the savings that are going to be at the township, city, and county levels. And when I talk about savings, I'm talking about you have to take into consideration the cost that all these governmental units are paying right now to replace their radios. The way we're looking at it down the future, that money is going to be saved. I think, what did Greg say this morning, that rural fire spends between around $30,000 a year in their annual budget for maintenance and equipment replacement? That's just rural fire. You know, and this is such a safety benefit to the residents of Grand Traverse County, and I tried to convey that as best I could. I talked about value, I talked about cost savings, because there is cost savings, and I talked about primarily that I do not believe that Grand Traverse County voters walked into that voting booth and checked that yes box for that 911 surcharge so that they could plug an operational hole in the county's budget. I think if we would have asked every single voter, gee, do you want to give us an extra $700,000 a year, or whatever it is, and plug that hole that we have in our budget. And I want everybody to understand, we are already donating general fund, well, we're not donating, we are spending general fund dollars for 911 central dispatch right now. At least we were through last year. So this is going to be not only an improvement in service, it is going to be a savings throughout this county. And I tried to convey that as best I could, and then I gave him Greg Bird's telephone number. But I just want you all to know that I did my level best, and we'll see how it turns out. And I sincerely hope that Greg can take a few minutes and return Mr. Walton's call, but I know he's got a full day.
Greg is meeting with him in the morning.
Oh, wonderful.
I am extremely disappointed that there has been an accusation that the surcharge money was used incorrectly. I did call our assistant prosecutor just to verify. The idea that for 7 months, this board of directors at Central Dispatch and the technical committee moved forward with the project and never checked the ballot language is absurd. And we did check that, and I'm not sure why this story popped up all of a sudden, but no one certainly contacted me, who is the representative on the board. I didn't hear from any fellow commissioners or staff people at the county. I did contact Chris, though, today, and Chris assured me again of what we were told, that the ballot language is broad and does encompass the scope of the radio project that we passed last week. And I have asked Chris to do a written opinion to satisfy the Record Eagle in their requests, and to satisfy any staff or commissioners that are concerned that 911 Board of Directors did not do their job in making sure, before we even went forward with a project, that it followed the scope of the millage itself. Beyond that, we can all guess what voters thought they were voting for, but what we're going to do is give them what the ballot language says, and that is operational and equipment needs for the central radio or central dispatch system, which does include the radio system. Bob?
Yeah, I mean, when he called me earlier today too, and I had to go look again at the ballot language, you know, and I feel the same as you. It's so ambiguous that it doesn't specifically say you have to use it for this, this, and this. And these are county entities that we are purchasing radios for. So it is for the benefit of the county. As much as we went round and round about we serve districts and county, this is for the benefit of the county in total in regards to safety.
And the city, which is part of the county, and this equipment is still going to be owned by Grand Traverse County.
I certainly hope.
Like I said, it made me go back and re-look at it, because I said, well,
Next
it
time
was a good question.
go to your representative on the board, not the reporter from the local tabloid. Yeah.
Being as you brought up our meeting.
Go.
I did leave the meeting, and I did tell Greg that I do support the 911 upgrading, the 800, but I still have a hard time with the single source pricing, and that I'm confident we could have done a better job. We could have gotten a better price. I'm not the one using the radios. Motorola is the radio that is of choice. I'm not going to tell you if that's a Mercedes, if the other ones are Cadillacs, or if the Motorola's a Chevy and the other one's a tin can and a string. It's just a poor process that still falls inside of our purchasing policy, because Motorola is on the MI, you can help me out.
The state contract, it's state contract pricing.
Right, state contract
So
pricing.
they've gone through a formal bid process to award that contract to Motorola.
Right. But there are other radio systems that fall under that state pricing as well that we didn't quote. I still have a problem with that, but.
Well, Dean was there at the 911 Board of Directors meeting. We specifically asked him to be there, and I was absolutely questioning sole source, as I'm sure you remember.
I do.
And we brought Dean into it to ask him his opinion. I want you to remember that the process was done through a technical subcommittee, through a Board of Directors meeting, along with a consultant from our finance director, to bring a radio system to the Board of Commissioners. I don't know how many of us know it, but we sure did follow the process. So I don't think you should say it's a bad process. And I think Dean should speak first, as having been at that meeting, about the sole source procedure.
Well, I'm absolutely fine with using the Motorola, but I think the question or the issue that Commissioner Klaus is raising is, did we really, and I think Jason Torrey addressed that. I mean, the quality of the radio and the ability to communicate, they did some testing, and I don't use a radio, so I wouldn't even know how to turn it on, but I think that's Commissioner Klaus's concern. Would the other radio, work and potentially be a lower cost option? I can't answer.
Can I
that.
jump in here, please? First of all, I think this is a discussion that we ought to have at the end of the month at our board meeting.
They're going to write the article tomorrow morning.
Okay, all right.
So we might
in
as
that
well
case,
say
I'm going
it
to
now.
answer a little bit.
Because it's not going to be
This is
quoted
not an apples to apples comparison, as Ron heard today. The other radios had a 3-year warranty. Motorola's got 6. The Motorola includes installation and taking out of systems, where the other radio is just purchasing a radio itself. The other vendor did have an opportunity to come forward, and there were some, didn't necessarily take every opportunity that was presented to the other vendor. So Commissioner Klaus and I tend to disagree on this.
The other radios do come with a 5-year warranty on the mobiles and a 3-year warranty on the portables, and a 6 and extensions available. But it's a significant amount, and I don't know if anybody knows what the significant amount is.
I sit on that committee.
Okay.
And I voted for the other one.
Okay.
And I think you know how much I read numbers and look at bills.
Yeah.
There's a
And-
reason I voted for Motorola.
And I'm fine with that. Well, I guess I'm not fine with that.
You're welcome to vote no like you did at the end of the month.
Certifying with it,
But it's going to be something that will need explaining, I'm sure, at some point in time.
We'll have Mr. Byrd here at the end of the month.
He will.
I mean-
The disappointment is in the media somehow being informed a week after we voted on this. They certainly didn't get this idea from the meeting, and then moving forward with the idea that we are misusing surcharge funds, because that's an exciting article to read. And if the question is really about a sole source vending with Motorola versus Kenwood, that's much different than an article about misuse of surcharge funds by someone. That's a lofty accusation. But as you and I both know, that's exactly what the headline will read. This discussion would be great at the end of the month, which was the appropriate time to have it. But for some reason, the prosecutor's office was involved, questioning of the ballot language was involved. Mike Walton contacted Metro Fire Chief today, our emergency manager, this didn't just appear out of the blue. Somebody contacted the Record Eagle and told them this.
If you purchase equipment, we all make purchases. If you were looking at a lawnmower for your business, you wouldn't test drive 5 mowers or have your guys do it and in front of the dealers say that, you know what, I'm going with Lark Lawn and Garden. You wouldn't want them to do that because, sheesh, now Lark Lawn and Garden has no reason to cut you any better deal. If there was quotes done prior to and then tested, then you would have your best price, knowing that everybody was bidding for the job. And
You voted yes on a sole source for the 911 console project just a few weeks ago and never brought any of this up.
I didn't realize what was involved with it.
They're all linked together.
I understand that now, and I'm not happy with that console.
We can absolutely have this discussion if the discussion is about surcharge funds being misused. That's a different discussion.
Yeah, that's not, I'm just not, it does fall in the purchasing policy. It was.
Right,
it was
purchasing policy, we can discuss that.
But it's done, it's went through the proper policy.
So I won't read a quote tomorrow about misuse of surcharge funds from anybody on this board.
From me?
Yeah, anyone on this board. Will I read that?
Not for me.
Okay. Because that is a really terrible thing to put out in the public a week after a vote and at the, what he called 45 minutes to an hour before our board meeting, when no one was even able to discuss it. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's an article about something that I certainly take very seriously, which is ethical questions, not appropriate for an article, certainly. Discussion of sole source and purchasing policy, absolutely. Discussion of misuse of surcharge funds, not at all. Particularly when they didn't even cover this radio program being approved or, voted in the committee level at all for 7 days. 7 days ago we did this. So again, just a reminder, obviously tonight we were considering building a $1.6 million building. It's amazing to me the things that happen on print that don't happen in real life, I guess.
And also on this, Chris, there was installation included. Yes. So, so it is.
We'll talk at the end of the month.
We have experts on it that work here, luckily, Jason and Greg both. They've done a great job. No need for closed session, so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
I hope my bicycle's still down.